So today we continue the California swing of the season preview by talking about LAFC, and in the next episode of the season preview, I'll talk about the other LA team, that is the LA Galaxy, and I think this is a perfect way for me to kind of finish off in terms of doing season preview today by talking about the two LA team. But first, we're going to talk about the team that, arguably had the most disappointing season last year and are looking to trying to rebound and trying to make the playoffs again, and that, of course, is LAFC, who finished a record of 12-9-13 and finished with 45 points. They scored 53 goals last season, which on paper is definitely one of the best goal-scoring team in the league, which is not a big surprise because when you have such a high-end talent on the attack that LAFC had, you expect them to be one of the best goal-scoring team in the league. But they've also conceded 51 goals with a goal differential of +2. And they finished ninth in the Western Conference. Now, last four seasons for LAFC, they finished ninth, as I mentioned, in 2021, finished seventh in 2020, finished first in 2019. That was the year when they won the Supporters' Shield, and at that time had the most points that any MLS team has ever had in MLS history. That, of course, was eventually broken by New England just this season. But that was also a team that was supposed to win MLS Cup, and they lost in the Western Conference in that one against the Seattle Sounders in 2020. They also lost to the Seattle Sounders, but this time in the first round. And then in 2018, they lost to RSL in the first round, and it was kind of a very disappointing way for them to end their expansion year. I mean, I know, obviously, for a team that made it to the playoffs as an expansion team is impressive, and the fact that they had the most points total that any expansion team has ever had in their expansion season is incredible, but they were also heavy favorites in that game against RSL, and the fact that they lost in that game at home and didn't able to get themselves move on into the next round, that has to be a bit disappointing. Now, in terms of the players that they signed this off season and the player that they are letting go this off season, well, there actually is some good names that they bought in terms of the players that they signed. One of the bigger names that they bought is Calvin Acosta, who they, of course, got from the Colorado Rapids, albeit in a very kind of controversial way because, Acosta, he wasn't really happy the fact that he was actually going to be staying in the league to move on to another team instead of making his jump to Europe. And I know Acosta had said before that he's very happy to, of course, join LAFC and maybe join a team that could have a bigger chance to, of course, win a championship. But there's no doubt that this is also an opportunity for LAFC to basically continue to develop on the career of Calvin Acosta and maybe sell him for a big sum of money. Though I will say that we'll see how is he going to kind of approach to go to another team. In a way, he's very motivated to try to work harder so that he can finally get his dream move to go to Europe. But obviously, one of the other bigger signings that they made, and something that probably have finally solved the issue that they've been having ever since they kind of came into the league, is Maxine Crepeau. I mean, they have really never had, LAFC have never had a goalkeeper that they, of course, can trust. Well, actually, I take that back. Tyler Miller was actually very decent when he came into the league, and it's been kind of also proven further right with him going to Minnesota. But ever since he left, they really had struggled in terms of that goalkeeping position. So the fact that they were able to land Maxine Crepeau, who, if you would have told me that Maxine Crepeau will actually be moving away to the Vancouver Whitecaps this offseason and going to another team, I would think you're absolutely crazy. Because I would never have thought that Maxine Crepeau would decide to leave his home country in Canada and leave the Whitecaps to join another team. But obviously, a lot of that has to do with some personal issue that he has, and that I always respect players with their personal issue that they might have either with the team or in this case the location, and that he decided to go to LA, and that this is definitely a massive upgrade in terms of the goalkeeping position, and again probably solve their issue with not having a decent goalkeeper in their roster, because Crepeau is considered one of the best, if not in my opinion, a top 5 goalkeeper in the league, and I think that's just been something that LAFC has been missing for a very long time. They got Franco Escobar from Atlanta United before getting Ishmael Tajuri-Shradi from NYCFC. Well, technically they didn't get it from NYCFC. Charlotte, of course, picked it up in the expansion draft, and then they, of course, got Tajuri-Shradi from there. But it was also kind of part of that blockbuster their trade that was going on, where they also sent Tristan Blackman to the Vancouver Whitecaps. But they also got Elie Sanchez from Sporting KC, and then they got John McCarthy for Inter Miami, who presumably, I think he, alongside with Thomas Romero, is going to back up Maxine Crepeau in that goalkeeping spot. Now, in terms of player that is leaving for this LAFC team, obviously the biggest names leaving this team is Atuesta. Now, despite the fact that it is going to be a bit of a loss for LAFC to not have Atuesta this season, they kind of replace him with a like with Kellen Acosta. Now, I'm not saying Kellen Acosta is going to completely replace Atuesta. I mean, what Atuesta did to this team is something that is kind of irreplaceable. You know, I've talked about many times where sometimes when you lose a player that is kind of like a heart and soul of your player, it is almost impossible, if not irreplaceable kind of piece. But I will say that, you know, bringing Kellen Acosta, that will definitely at least partially replace the presence that Atuesta has had there. But nevertheless, you know, it is still a huge loss for LAFC losing him this offseason. But it's understandable, knowing the fact that he even wanted to either make a jump to Europe or move back to South America, and he's actually going to be joining one of the powerhouse in Brazilian soccer, that is Palmeiras, also known as a team that seems like they love to pick MLS players. Like this offseason, Palmeiras basically are linked with every single big name MLS player, although I think they've only signed like two of them, and Atuesta, of course, is one of them that is going to be going to Palmeiras. They also lost Bryce Duke to Inter Miami, and then Pablo Ceciega, who I think if I remember, did they lose him in the expansion? No, I don't think it was the expansion draft, but he is going to be going to Charlotte FC. Jamel Blackman is also going to be leaving to Huddersfield. Then you got Raheem Edwards, who becoming really the first ever player in MLS history to play for the two LA team. Like, I don't recall there has been any MLS player that has ever played with the two LA team, and it's going to be interesting to see how he is going to be greeted by Galaxy fans, at the fact that he was just an LAFC player. Though I will say that I don't think Galaxy fans are going to be too harsh on him, because Raheem Edwards has really started to develop in a career where he's kind of becoming a bit of a journeyman, and for a guy that, you know, I remember during his TFC day that was saying that he could be the next best thing. Yeah, it just have not work out, and now it seems like he's just bounced around the league ever since that. They also lost Danny Cristo, but that he is going to be going to LAFC affiliates Las Vegas. Like the same goes with Alvaro Arizanan. And then of course they lost Tristan Blackman, and as I mentioned, that was part of the deal that they have with Charlotte and NYCFC to get Ishmael Tajuri-Shradi, but Blackman is going to be going to Vancouver, and then Jordan Harvey, they of course release him this offseason as part of the end of season roster move. Now, what's the optimism for this LAFC team? So, obviously, the big optimism LAFC fan will still have this team is the high-end talent is still there. Like, if you look at this team, it is still one of the most talented squad in this team, where most of the position is pretty stacked. Like, if you put in the best star 11 in this team, and you feel the best star 11, this team can beat anybody. I mean, this team can be an MLS Cup contender, but the problem is, when do they get a chance to feel that best 11? Because last season, you know, they had a lot of injuries to deal with, especially to some of their star player, and maybe that also was kind of one of the things that hinders the reason why they had such a disappointing season. But at least, you know, with this team, there is still that high-end talent, and let's not also forget that Carlos Vela is still here. Like, as long as Carlos Vela is still with this LAFC team, and if he can stay healthy, this team should be a competitive and an MLS Cup contender. And then, as I mentioned, they finally got a top-level goalkeeper in Maxine Crepeau. I mean, he's going to be a guy that I think he's going to fit very well with this LAFC team, and again, I think it's unfortunate of what happened with him with the Vancouver Whitecaps, but in some way there's a chance where if he does well with LAFC, not only he can win a championship, but he can maybe really start to push his way. Well, he's already part of the Canadian national team, but lately it's been Mima Broyan, the one that's been the starting goalkeeper for Canada. But there's no doubt that he's kind of like the player that is next in line, so he can definitely continue to add to his resume that he is going to be the future for Canada in the goalkeeping position for that national team. Now, the concern for this LAFC team. So, obviously, the biggest concern about this team is the backline. So, as much as there are a lot of good attacking talent, and in the midfield, even losing Atuesta, they got a good replacement in Kellen Acosta, and that there's still really good talent in the midfield too. The backline is where it's still a bit of a concern, and this is also nothing new. Like, this team has always been a team that seems to always focus a lot on their attack in the midfield and not so much on the backline, and that's something that it has kind of produced them to be a very entertaining team to watch, but also this is also maybe the reason why they haven't won an MLS Cup. Like, you can't simply just have a talented attack and a talented midfield, and you just have a very suspect backline and hope that you can, of course, win championship. Like, we've seen before where teams that, of course, win MLS Cup, they always tends to have a really strong backline. And, this backline for LAFC, it is definitely upcoming, and I will also say that they did lose some key pieces in the back line. Well, the key pieces that they lost was Eddie Segura in that back line, though he is not going to be returning at the very minimum. I think maybe in the middle of the season, because I know he undergo knee surgery back in August. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it's going to work, and especially they didn't really make a lot of signings to improve the back line. Like, the only player that they of course signed was Franco Escobar, but I don't think he's going to be a regular starter for this team. So yeah, this is going to be so that they got to figure out. And not to mention they also lost Tristan Blackman, which that one will definitely the cripple a little bit of the depth and a little bit of the pieces of what already is not a very good back line in this team. Can Carlos Velas stay healthy for this team? So, Vela, obviously last season, he had to battle a lot of injuries and was playing not a lot of minutes. And Vela have also started to be very injury prone in these last two seasons. And there's no doubt that, when Vela is healthy, he is arguably the best player in this league. But, when he's not healthy, you can see how much LAFC missed him going forward on the attack. So, for LAFC fan, they hope that this year he can, of course, stay out of the IR list and able to play throughout the full season, because we know what he can do when he is able to stay healthy and play for the full season. I mean, just look at what happened in 2019 when he, of course, won the MVP and really kind of turned himself to like the Lionel Messi of MLS back in 2019. And then lastly, the last concern for this team, and this is arguably probably the biggest concern for LAFC coming into this season, is Steve Giordano. Now, I know there's a lot of LAFC fans are not happy about this hiring, and that it feels like it is a huge downgrade from them getting Bob Bradley, one of the more well-known head coach in MLS and one of the more successful head coach in MLS, to now get a guy that basically is a head coach of their reserve team in the USL Championship, and they were one of the worst team in the USL Championship during that point. Now, that being said, Steve Giordano, the squad that he had to work with, Las Vegas Lights, it was not a good squad whatsoever. And the fact that he's able to now work with a much more decent squad, I expect he should be able to improve on the record that he has with the Las Vegas Lights. And also not to mention the fact that last year, when you look at all the MLS kind of reserve team that was in the USL Championship, pretty much all of them did really poorly last season in that league. So yeah, I mean, again, it's going to be interesting. Like, it will be very interesting to see how he's going to do. And not to mention the fact that he's never had a head coaching gig in MLS. That also kind of put that skepticism that he's not going to do well. And we also know that, you know, in MLS, you can have a very decent squad. You can have kind of the high-end squad that LAFC had. But at the end of the day, you know, coaching really matters in MLS. Like, we've seen in this league that some of the best team in the league is all because of good coaching. And even with some teams that might not have a decent squad, the reason why they're very good is because they have good coaching. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see whether or not if Chiardolo is going to be it, and he has to be it, because, you know, I think their GM John Thornton even doubled down by saying that this has been kind of a hiring that they've been looking to make for a couple years down the line, and that it's just kind of also feel like, you know, he's saying that this was always part of the plan. And if this does not work out, then yeah, not only the fact that Chiardolo could also be one of the head coach that could be the first to be fired, and that, again, when I do the hot seat index, I definitely think that Chiardolo will be one of the one that is going to be very high on that hot seat index. But the same goes for John Thornton. I mean, he's been under fire a lot, especially from LAFC fans, with some of the moves that his team has made, and also now hiring a guy that basically have no MLS head coach experience and did very poorly in the USL Championship. So yeah, his reputation is definitely on the line, and he's better hope that this, of course, would work out, because if it doesn't work out, yeah, he could be another their person that could be under the chopping block in this LAFC team. Now, in terms of MVP for this team, I mean, it still has to be Carlos Vela. It's pretty obvious. And for the comeback player, I'm actually also going to go with Carlos Vela too. And again, I try my best to not put the same comeback player alongside with MVP, but this is kind of the case. I mean, you know, Vela is still the most important player on this team. Like, actually, if there is a case where if I cannot pick the same comeback player and MVP at the same time, I would say the other MVP could be Brian Rodriguez. I mean, you know, he's still with this team, and I thought last season he had an incredible year, and there's no doubt that if he had another incredible year again this season, he's going to be sold off to Europe or somewhere for a big amount of money. And then let's also not forget about Chicho Arango, who last season really took the league to storm, and I mentioned the fact that he's definitely a future number 9 for this LAFC team, and that I think you could even say that he is probably going to be the best number 9 that LAFC has ever had, even better than when they had Diamande a couple of years ago. But yeah, besides that, you know, for comeback player, it's pretty obvious for Carlos Vela, trying to stay healthy, trying to look like the Carlos Vela that we saw when he came into the league with LAFC in the first 2 seasons. And yeah, we'll see if that, of course, is the case. And then finally, expectation for LAFC, MLS Cup contender. I mean, there's really not anything other than the fact that this is a cup contender, and anything that is not close to that we'll consider to be a very disappointment. And that's why last season it was such a disappointment of how not only the fact that they did not even compete to win MLS Cup, but they didn't even make it the dance to try to compete for MLS Cup. And that another year of failure. I expect there could be some changes, not only in the head coaching, but also maybe in the front office of this team. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for my season preview of LAFC. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And if you're an LAFC fan, what do you think? You're optimistic about this season, your concern, and most importantly, your expectation. What do you expect this team is going to be? But yeah, hope you guys enjoy this video, and I will see you guys next time.